Ipocognizione.
Hypocognition is a difficult word that is hardly used, but it's very important. It indicates the situation of those who do not own words, concepts and models for interpreting reality, those he would need to manage his or her inner life and the relationship with others. The concept of hypocognition derives from a study carried out in Tahiti in the 50s by Robert Levy, who was an anthropologist and a psychotherapist. Trying to understand why there was such a high number of suicides in Tahiti, Levy discovered that the people of Tahiti hadn't got the words to indicate pain apart from physical pain. They had no words to indicate spiritual suffering. Of course, they knew about it, they felt it, but they didn't have a concept and a name, so they were unable to identify it. They were not capable of naming it, of working on fragility, sadness, and anguish. The consequence of this inability, if there was intense suffering that for them was simply unintelligible, was the cord circuit leading to suicide. I tell this incredible scientific anecdote because I think it makes us understand far better than a long speech what is the practical, almost material importance of words. In fact, words, the words we use, the words we listen to, the words we read, have a substantial and deep effect on our perception of reality, even apart from our representation of reality. Let's imagine we have had an unpleasant experience, a fight, a road accident, a professional failure, and let's consider the different ways we could use to describe the state of mind deriving from it. If we were to say that we are, wild with rage, we would feel this tension on the neck and jaws. We would be clenching our fists and ready for disorderly gestures. If we say we are just angry, we would feel emotional tension, but we would be able to dominate ourselves and avoiding actions that we might regret later on. If we were to say, that we are simply annoyed, we would be ready to react in a rational way to that unpleasantness, choosing the most adequate solutions, and we would be ready to get out of the negative experience and get back to a situation of emotional well-being rather rapidly. The words we use may have an extraordinary impact not only on our individual lives but also on our collective life. The words create reality. They do and undo things. They are acts of which we must foresee and face the consequences, and that in a variety of situations, both private and public. Good politics is also maybe mainly giving the right name to things. That is something that some 2,500 years ago had already been understood by a gentleman called Confucius. A young disciple asked him the following: Master, if you were given a reign to be governed according to your principles, what would be the first thing you would do? And Confucius answered, I would rectify names, I would correct names. And, the disciple was very amazed. What do you mean? There are so many urgent things that a person who manages a country must look after. You would waste your time doing that? Is it a joke? And he explained, if the names are not correct, if they do not correspond to reality, the language hasn't got its object. And if the language has no object, acting becomes complicated. All human actions go bust, and managing them is impossible and meaningless. That is why the first task of a true statesman is precisely rectifying names.
Words are important. Words are really important. As I said, words are important, and for us the important word is convergence. In the definition of the encyclopedia, convergence means aiming at the same goal, concurring for the same effect, with agreement, synergy, and harmony. Between 2008 and 2013, the cost of industrial robot fell by 23 times. Between 2007 and 2014, the cost of a 3D printer was 400 times cheaper, and today you can buy one in a supermarket with a couple of €100. In only 6 years, between 2007 and 2013, the cost of a drone is 142 times cheaper, and today you can buy one in a supermarket for a couple of €100. In 7 years, the DNA sequencing kit is 10,000 times cheaper than it was. And I suppose that everybody will be able to buy one in a short time. The cost of a LiDAR sensor, which is used for autonomous driving, which provides data on the distance and position of other cars, in 5 years has become 250 times cheaper. Well, in only 12 months, the cost of bitcoins has grown 14 times. And I didn't buy one, not one. Well, in this context, which generates controversies on the use of privacy and the dominating positions that are called over the top, it is doubtless that we are going towards new ways of living and working. The logical processes we were used to have reversed, and they're becoming software-guided more and more. When a couple of years ago we used to go to visit corporations, this occurred after the foundations, the walls, and even the production lines had already been set up. And we had an ancillary role. Our contribution was definitely ancillary. It was important but secondary. In the next 5 years, Exprivia Italtel will work to overturn this paradigm. And at the core of corporations, there will be a software-governed logical model. The foundations, the walls, the production lines will always be important systems, but they will turn around immaterial things, immaterial parts of the corporation. To use an image, the physical construction of a plant, of a production plant, will start only after the digital business model has been adequately designed. Italy is an extraordinary country with its identity founded on material and immaterial things. For example, art and culture and beauty, but also on manufacturing. Exprivia and Italtel represent Italy's identity very well. Italtel's history is almost 100 years old, and it started with old telephone exchange centers. I suppose you remember that a telephone call lengthens life. That was one of the slogans that we used in advertising. But then came the internet and the technological revolutions, and today I think that software in distributed clouds embraces everything. We have the dream of bringing made in Italy things into the digital world, and to bring digital transformation into the world in the Italian way. And we believe, for this reason, that with our project we can combine the technology of networks with the technology of software. But you see, this is not simply an integration, an industrial integration. It's the combination of culture, skills, something that we are sure, we are convinced that will be something more than the summing up of the different corporations. And that is exactly what we're working at. The scenario before me is, quite frankly, very exciting. Thousands, billions of connections that will become more and more pervasive, more and more reliable, more and more persistent, and more scattered everywhere. This is a scenario of connected objects that generate data, that connect data, so things that lead to what this can generate. Artificial intelligence will enter into the meaning of what is produced. Maybe it cannot be seen straight away, however, project and process automation, the approach of the client, all of these things will be achieved. This is what we believe in. This is exactly what we believe in. And we want to work every single day in the next 5 years to implement this beautiful industrial plan. In the fourth industrial revolution, well, we've already entered that, and in the next 5 years, but already as of today, our group will work to build the corporate avatar. What will be your avatar, the digital twin capable of simulating and constantly improving production quality and performances in real and virtual environments with hybrid end-to-end vertical and horizontal integrations so as to achieve new levels of corporate excellence and to develop new innovative business models. It is clear that digital transformation does not involve software or technology, but innovation in corporate processes in an independent manner, independent of any technological constraint. Technology helps us to accelerate the rhythm of transformation. Sometimes it becomes the main player of new business models. Welcome to tomorrow.
I was in Canada for a business trip, Montreal, Quebec, and Vancouver. This latest city that has beautiful views with snow-covered mountains, oceans, and skyscrapers. I visited a bookshop that was very different from those I normally go to. It is called MacLeod's Books, and it sells all sorts of second-hand books, a great variety of them. It is in Pender Street, right downtown, and in my opinion, should be a compulsory visit for whoever goes to Vancouver. Why is MacLeod's such a place out of the ordinary, apart from the fact that you can find practically everything? And in order to understand that, you have to describe the place with 2 words. Well, gigantic mass. Books are organized in an absolutely random way. They are piled up on tables, crammed on shelves, and in some areas of the shop, even moving around is rather complicated. The impression that is not very reassuring is that the wrong action might produce a series of collapses with unforeseeable effects. If you read the comments on the net, you will discover that many regulars describe this visit as a real treasure trove. And when I was in the underground floor, that if possible was even more untidy than the ground floor and had a very mysterious atmosphere, almost esoteric one. Well, I did find some truly surprising books, but the most incredible aspect of the experience is watching the shop assistants. There is a customer coming along that is quite doubtful because he thinks it is impossible to find anything in there, and he asks something, possibly showing a piece of paper with a note, and the assistant has this professional smile that is somehow disturbing, nods, and without consulting computers or archives, he goes with a great assertiveness towards a clear point in that mass. He disappears among those heaps of volumes, and he re-emerges with the desired book. The performance is somehow hypnotic, is like a sporting event, or maybe rather better, conjuring tricks. It is an almost supernatural ability of these assistants at MacLeod's made me think of a very interesting book, the title of which was A Perfect Mess. There are many things that make us think twice about this book. The gist of the book, explained with very good and fun examples, is that neatness, organization, and this trend to planning produce more damages than advantages, and that individuals, institutions, and systems that are moderately disorganized prove to be more dynamic, elastic, and creative than those that are far too organized. For most of us, that's what the authors claim, order has become an end rather than a means. When we have this anxiety for our desks and our untidy houses, it's not so much because the disorder is creating true problems, but it's simply because we expect that we must be more neat and organized. Very true. I told myself after rereading some pages of that book, and then I had a look at my desk, and I had practically recently decided to tidy it up. These final decisions are taken, let me say, a couple of times a month. And I'm quoting now a sentence by Albert Einstein: if a cluttered desk is a sign of a cluttered mind, of what then is an empty desk a sign? And in a very good mood, I went for a walk along.
Lorenzo was the CFO, and he called us in because he was responsible for the 4.0 industry program in his company. At our very first meeting, he told us that the production line in which they smelted parts to produce handlebars had been optimized to such an extent that the head of the line considered it as his invisible friend. Just like children. The head of the line called it Billy. Liborio, that was the name of the head of the production line, lived almost in symbiosis with Billy the machine. And it was one of the first meetings that led me to think of the relationship between Liborio and the machine. I thought that Liborio and Billy could be two twins. I thought Liborio's dirty hand, and I thought of the very hard job that he did every day. So we were to design a twin machine, a digital clone, but not like the sheep dolly. I was thinking of a twin capable of reproducing what the steel machine did, a copy that had the exact same logical processes but without any steel, a true machine, a machine that was made totally of software. I hadn't given it a name yet. Now I was already thinking of when the machine would have adjusted the smelting temperature, or when it would decide to add some lubricant in Liborio's place. The twin would have asked Liborio if he wanted to make the adjustments, or if he preferred that it went freely, autonomously, and what it would have done when Liborio had sent the twin machine to send the order to the purchasing office for the consumables, because Liborio didn't really like the people who were in the purchasing office. After a couple of weeks, I met Lorenzo, the CEO, and he was also head of the information systems. Our meeting lasted half an hour, the time it took to tell him how the twin digital machine would work to produce the family of handlebars. After a while, the solution became operational, and with the whole team, we went down to the production floor to see how this line worked, while it was governed by the twin digital machine. This time, Liborio was standing in front of the monitors, reproducing the process and all the data that we could finally explore and analyze. Well, Lorenzo said, how shall we call the twin machine? And all together, everybody said, Billy. This happened on the 12th of July, 2019.
Nel 1990
In 1990, some 65% of the Vietnamese children under the age of 5, the great majority of those who lived in rural villages, suffered out of some form of malnutrition. In order to face this plague, Save the Children sent an expert to Vietnam. The name of the expert was Jerry Sternin. Some days after his arrival at Hanoi, Sternin was called by a top official at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who very bluntly told him that many in the government and in the top sphere of the bureaucracy were not very warm about his being in the country. The official told Sternin that he would be given 6 months, at the end of which, if there were no documented results, the visa would not be renewed and he would have to leave the country. Sternin had studied the many analyses existing on the problem. All of this analysis attributed child malnutrition and all the diseases that went with it to a number of factors: poverty, low hygiene, and lack of drinkable water, and ignorance of the minimum rules of nutrition. The analyses were very appropriate, but they gave him no ideas to face his task. In 6 months, he was unable to solve enormous and endemic problems such as poverty, ignorance, lack of drinkable water, whereas he needed rapid and visible results. So Sternin started traveling in the various villages, asking all mothers the same question. Well, in this village, there are children that are as poor as the others, but who have grown better and are healthier than the others. And in every and each village, the answer was yes. In every village, there were children that were well nourished despite poverty and lack of hygiene. So malnutrition was not an inescapable fate. You only had to understand why. Sternin discovered that the malnourished kids would eat with the adults twice a day, a not appropriate rhythm for children who had difficult health situations, so they were unable to metabolize the food. Those that were well nourished ate the same quantity of food, but this food was divided in 4 meals, and they were able to assimilate it. When they were not well, their moms would spoon feed them, even though they didn't feel like eating, whereas the mothers of the children that were malnourished would lead them to themselves, which meant that they went without food. And the mothers of healthy children would put in the rice of their kids food that was normally reserved to adults, shrimps and a special type of potato. This food were available, but they were traditionally neglected in kids' diet, and they would give the children proteins that were indispensable for their growth and their health. The dietary habits of the families of the children in good health were spread also to the other families, and so at the end of the 6 months, more than 50% of the malnourished children that had been involved in this operation, this project, were in good health, and the visa, Sternin's visa, was extended. The method was spread all over the country and saved more than 50,000 kids from malnutrition. This is a beautiful story and a true story, and there is in this story a very simple and brilliant idea. So what did, in fact, Sternin do? Since he could not deal with poverty, lack of drinkable water, and minimal hygiene, but since he didn't want to give up, he simply reversed the way in which the problem had to be faced. In a situation that seemed hopeless, he discovered what was working, the virtuous, dietary habits of some mothers, and he replicated the model. He discovered the positive examples and spread them in a sort of beneficial contagion, a method, concentrating on what works to reproduce it rather than concentrating on what does not work to try sometimes uselessly to repair it. This is a method that should be studied, understood, and applied by a policy that really wanted.
When the clouds came down to the level of the road, we found ourselves wrapped in fog. In reality, this was a strange kind of fog. It was a situation in which everything paradoxically became clearer. The thicker the fog, the more I could see. Information of which I ignored the existence surrounded me, and I moved in the fog with instruments that knew how to see. They read what was happening and they helped me understand, addressing me to what I had to do and telling me how to do it. In the fog, it was not like being in a cloud. You looked at a cloud and you could speak to it from afar. It was up there, heavens knows where, in India, or maybe in Connecticut. The fog was the offspring of the Internet of Things, where everyone spoke to everyone, people and things that warned people, people who informed things, and things which spoke to things. Everything happened at a speed that had been unthinkable of before. The standard of fifth-generation connectivity, vulgarly called 5G, was 100 to 1,000 times faster than the previous one. And it was at a traffic light that a car which had passed with the red crashed into me on my side. It was a very hard crash. The safety system, the car's safety system started to work, and the good thing was that in the fog, hundreds of different devices started to work, and the emergency system was immediately warned, and the damage to people and things was immediately assessed. As I had done many times at the doctor's office, I pressed the sensor with the microneedles that I had in my arm, so that all my measurements could be felt at that time. My artery pressure, my heartbeat, a total clinical picture of the last few years. And this allowed the medical staff to understand who I was, what was wrong with me as soon as they arrived on the location. And they could do what was necessary to assist me. In the meantime, the crash had slightly put me off, and I could hear less and less. I couldn't hear the noise around me, but that was not because I was fainting. It was the traffic around me that was slowing down, because the fog was addressing the cars towards alternative routes, avoiding traffic jams and delays. The information system of the road system allowed the control room of the municipal traffic police to have all their reports with all the designs and dynamics of the accident in a few seconds, and the responsibility of the drivers as well. So I simply had to use the tablet of the traffic policeman in order to make my report, and I came home practically with no problems at all. This happened on the 12th of July, 2020.
Yesterday night I had a dream. Well, by itself is not a very interesting piece of information. According to what experts tell us, we all dream every single night. But not all of us remember our own night experience, and I am one of those who don't normally. But last night's dream is something I remember very well, so well that sometimes I have the feeling it is something that really happened. I was on the square of a small village full of people. There was a background hubbub that is typical of groups of people all talking at the same time, and I was with a girl of about 10 years, a very pretty, nice, friendly girl, even though with a little bit presumptuous. And I knew, as you know in dreams, without anyone telling you, that she was a friend of mine and that she was there to explain a number of important things. And she said, now we stop the sound. And he made a gesture as if to roll a sheet of paper into a ball. And suddenly the buzz stopped. They all went on talking, but the scene was in absolute silence. Well, look at the expression of these people while they are talking among them. That's what my young friend said. And I asked, why? Well, because the words sometimes serve to hide what we think rather than to reveal it. Lying with the expression of the face is more difficult. When you grow up, you will have to be able to read faces beyond words. I said, well, but I am already grown up, or maybe I just thought it, I don't know. But she had already approached a group of young people who were standing next to a lamppost, and she waved at me just to tell me I had to look at them, and then I realized they could not see us. We were invisible. We could look at them, study them very closely, and in fact, my young friend was absolutely right. If you're not distracted by words, if you can, if you want, just concentrate on the details, you will realize there is a truth in the face. Merriness, anger, sadness, surprise, revulsion, embarrassment, wonder, despondency, fear, enthusiasm, and many shades that are very difficult to describe. Well, we moved around, and she attracted my attention to a girl that was talking with a boy, and she had a very hostile face, full of resentment and rage. What can you read on the face of this girl? Rage, a lot of aggressiveness and rage. And you know what she's saying? Well, I imagine she's offending him. Do you think so? And she snapped her fingers, and the sound came back. And the girl was saying, well, honestly, I don't want to fight. That's what the girl was saying. Is she telling the truth, in your opinion? No, I don't think so. In fact, no, she's not telling the truth. She wants to say unpleasant things, but her words are, honestly, I don't want to fight. I don't want to have a fight. Adverbs are dangerous objects. You must beware, both when other people speak and when we ourselves speak. I don't understand. Well, when someone says, sincerely, honestly, earnestly, he wants or doesn't want to say or do something, well, beware. Because it is very clear evidence that that person is not sincere, is not earnest, is not honest, or whatever he has declared he is through an adverb. The worst lies are hidden behind adverbs. And you know what is the most dangerous adverb of all? What is it? Absolutely. It is the adverb hiding the worst wrongdoings. Remember that when you grow up. But I am a grown-up. I wanted to say that and much more. For example, what was her name and how she knew so many things, even though she was a young girl. But suddenly, as it is the case, the dream finished and I woke up. To manage our corporate activities, we started to use virtual assistants. We handed over our activity to entities which could do our jobs in fractions of a second. In order to make our sales and forecast processes more efficiently, we entrusted our jobs to intangible assistants. One was called Tokyo. Tokyo was well-mannered, and she intervened only if called upon. But she had one defect. She listened to everything, absolutely everything, and she processed, associated, analyzed, and synthesized. She even drew conclusions, which were objective, but sometimes unexpected, which were based on facts, events, and stuff that was written on electronic sheets. But she had the ability of collecting information from various sources, and she reprimanded me if I got my subjectives wrong. The aspect that most fascinated me was that she didn't tell lies. She put everything together and blurted out everything pitilessly. Instead of following my sales staff, I made my forecast review with her. I did it with Tokyo. She was on my desk, black, shiny, connected with the whole world, and with all the corporate information systems. In real time, I could compare balance sheets of the previous 3 years and make forecasts for the next quarter and comment on data objectively.
Tokyo, what are the sales estimates for the second quarter, I asked? 1.5 million. As you can see on the diagram on the screen, you're far from the budget, which is 1.8. You're missing 300,000 euros still, and the analysis of different deals, the confidence factor is 10%. Yes, but what do you say, Tokyo? Will I meet my goal, I asked. According to the forecast, you will not meet your goal, not the one that you communicated 10 days ago to the CEO. Looking at all the emails the last 3 years, and for the closure of the second quarter, the phrase that the CEO used most was, if you continue like this, you won't have cake at Christmas. Do you need anything else? Tokyo was very polite. Tokyo, but what can I do to make up for lost time? I have analyzed all the information regarding sales and the average times of closing a deal. My advice is to pray and work in the next quarter. But Tokyo, besides using information, couldn't you perhaps perk me up, tell me that I can make it? I have been set to elicit my sales manager only if there's an over budget. Below 70%, I can only send you an email where I sadly invite you to undertake a new challenge and to thank you for the activity that you have undertaken so far with the committedness and the professional skills that you have always had. Tokyo listened to all of my questions and she answered. This happened on the 12th of July, 2021.
Well, I was wandering among the shelves of a big bookshop in downtown Rome, and I hear someone calling me. I turn round and I find this smiling gentleman between 70s and 80s, a well-known face, one of the protagonists of the first Repubblica and the so-called Tangentopoli, and he wasn't on the side of investigators and public prosecutors. In order to eliminate any doubt, he introduces himself and holds out his hand. And he has a good catch, an assertive one, but not aggressive. I look around me just to check if someone has spotted us, is looking at us, but no one is looking. Well, there is something in your latest novel that impressed me enormously, said without any sort of preamble, as if you had been there waiting for me and precisely to tell me that. What is that? Well, the understanding of the psychology of corruption. It is represented in such a credible way that one may wonder if the author had lived, events that are similar to those that are told in the book. He looks at me smiling, whereas I refrain from asking him on the basis of what elements he can state that that description is credible. The situation is somehow surreal, but I feel at ease. I think that such an opportunity won't come along a second time. So I ask him, what is your opinion on the phenomenon, on corruption, I mean? And what should we do in order to fight it effectively, according to him? It is a sort of embarrassing question, considering the story of this man. But after all, it was not I who introduced the subject. He's not upset or offended, and he answers sort of explaining me things. You see, well, corruption in this country is an easy choice, or at least it is not sufficiently uncomfortable for a variety of reasons: provisions, habits, inefficacy of controls, and also the trend to self-justify oneself, as you said in your novel. The solution is making this choice hard, cumbersome, difficult. Laziness, not only the moral laziness, produces corruption, and laziness can help to defeat corruption. It is useless to cherish the hope that man will behave well for ethical reasons. Some do it, many others don't. You and I, for different reasons. Well, we both know what I'm talking about. Well, but this is very theoretical. Well, let's make it practical. There is a simple thing that could be done immediately. What's that? Well, eliminating cash. Well, if we were to rule out that all transactions, excluding only those that are for minimum amounts, which should happen with cards or cell phones, don't tell me that it is impossible that it would be a present to the banks that would complicate the life of old people or other similar nonsense. Well, everybody has a cell phone. We would just need a couple of years to educate people and make the system work well. One could start immediately with the elimination of large denomination banknotes. In your opinion, who handles this 500 euro notes? The life of those who corrupt and those who are corrupted would become far more difficult without envelopes and attaché case full of money. Well, but there are the big briberies, payments, wire payments from one foreign bank to another, money laundering, so on. Certainly. Well, you have to care for that in a different way, but the system problem would be solved. And by the way, when you eliminate cash, you would have, given a good blow, I don't know, to tax evasion, bank robberies, and various other unpleasant things. Well, would you mind if I write this conversation? He shrugs, nods with a vague smile, with an expression that is difficult to decipher, without making me identifiable. Then he shakes my hand and goes away.
Before doing the job I do today, I worked in a bank and I dealt with development. I went to visit companies to show them our services and trying to acquire new clients or to sell new services to old clients. That was a time of transition from a certain type of applications to newer, more safe ones. Everything was supported by distributed, decentralized technologies. When something had to change, especially at work or in one's activity, people are generally very much afraid. Changing software, changing system, changing way to access a service created always fear and anxiety, the fear of doing something wrong. I spoke to clients about fear and trust. I explained to them how the new technological paradigms could help us win over our fear and trust the systems into which we put our money or with which we did our transactions. As time went by, operations became simpler and more natural thanks to digital identity, which was the sum of behaviors, information, sector analyses, parameters of expenses, supported by authentication systems. When I spoke to my children that once, and I told them that once in a bank, we had to sign a specimen in order to deposit our signature, and there was somebody who compared this to the signature on a check, they started to laugh. And when they asked me what a check was, I was evasive because I didn't want to seem as if I came from the Jurassic Age. With digital identity, the user interface changed, and the cross-authentication systems involving the face, voice, and if necessary, the iris and digital prints started to become used. Once I had to pay for my petrol at the petrol station. My 3D smartphone projected my avatar for my vocal recognition and authorized payment. But something went wrong and the transaction was not authorized. The voice told me that the facial recognition had not occurred correctly and therefore the transaction had not been authorized. Actually, in that period, I was on a diet, and on that particular day, my face looked particularly thin, and the system had not cross-acknowledged my face and my voice. So I ran to the bar at the gas station and I ate 6 sandwiches. I came back and I tried to pay, but the system told me that 6 sandwiches were an anomalous behavior for me. At that stage, I was asked to open my eyes so that my iris could be impressed, and everything went the way it should have. It was the 12th of July, 2022.
In November 2011, in the midst of the political crisis that led to the end of the Berlusconi government, I happened to meet at a friend's house one of the most famous Italian posters, an expert that was used to go to TV talk shows and formulate rapid judgments and final forecasts. We were all wondering that evening what was going to happen, if we were to vote immediately or if someone would have been able to form an emergency government to get the country out of the crisis. During the conversation, this TV super expert, who was this poster and guru, he said in a very drastic and determined way, with the expression of someone who is at a far higher level than mere mortals, he said, well, we'll be voting within 3 months. Maximum. Well, assuredness always makes me shy, because if I think that if someone, a super expert, a post and a guru says something in such a determined way, he must have very good reasons for that. So I asked him, of course, with respect and great care, for what reason and on what basis he made such a blunt statement. He turned towards me, looking at me as if he was looking at an annoying insect, and after some instance he answered, well, it is obvious that there are no reasonable alternatives. It is impossible to form any sort of government. That's why we'll be voting within 3 months. End of the conversation. And 3 months later, we had a government chaired by Senator Mr. Monti, and then we voted in February 2013, 15 months after the forecast, let's say, and not very precise forecast of the guru in question. In 1874, the scientist 1874, the scientist Philip von Jolly stated that in physics, everything had already been discovered. In 1916, a gentleman called Charlie Chaplin stated that audiences were not interested in seeing people moving on a screen, but a real human being on stage. In 1932, another gentleman, Mr. Albert Einstein, declared that there would never be the possibility of producing atomic energy. In 1943, the then president of IBM, Thomas Watson, stated that in the future there would have been maximum 5 people in the world interested in buying a computer. In 1977, Ken Olsen, who is the founder of Digital Equipment Corporation, just to mean who they are, the first IT company who made a computer that was smaller than a whole room and so was meant for commercial purposes, said that there was not one single reason in the world why someone might have wanted a computer at home. In 1995, Robert Metcalfe, the inventor of Internet, stated that Internet would soon become a supernova, that in 1996 it would have collapsed in the most catastrophic way. In 2007, Stephen Ballmer, former CEO of Microsoft and former for good reasons, said there was no possibility whatsoever that the iPhone might conquer any significant share of the market. We might go on for a while. There is a psychologist from Berkeley, Philip Tetlock, did so, analyzing 82,361 forecasts by 284 experts over 10 years, and he concluded that their precision, or rather imprecision, would have been the same if they had been generated by a computer working randomly. The problem is that the so-called experts, well, don't suffer any consequence when they get a focus wrong, whereas they get visibility and pass where, through their skill or lack, their forecast prove exact. However, wrong forecast may lead to catastrophic effects if the person is considered reliable, and if on the basis of those forecasts important decisions are taken. When we read the prophecies of a so-called expert, before trusting him, it would be a good idea to check the forecasts that most certainly he has made in the past.
Mr. Buzzoni called me to speak about company dashboards, to have a synthesis of strategic information in meetings in order to understand what he wanted. He continuously repeated, today there's too much information, and what is not needed only makes noise. It's the noise that covers the information that I really need. He said, I would like to split myself into two parts. I wish there were another me, looking for the data that I want, that fixed them up and perfected them the way I want them, and kept this blessed noise away from me. And then another me that took an interest in part in the development plans and industrial relations, knowing that my alter ego could give me all the information I need. And then other me's and other me's as well. I gave him the example of the sundial, silent, with no background noise. He would be at the center of the system, and many other shadows would move according to how the sun tilted. He understood very well that we could create many shadows that turned 24 hours a day for 365 days, doing what he wanted, how he wanted, and when he wanted. A set of shadows that moved like a pack of hunting dogs in the network, in the open data, in the information systems, capable of finding information, capturing it, and bringing it to him, what he really wanted, what he needed. He used to say, you see, my dear, ordinary activity, for example, balance sheet data, you can manage with good managers. But I don't want to envisage the future. I'm not so presumptuous. I want to forestall it. And to do this, I need you and your knowledge. We continue to develop and to add new shadows, new algorithms, and analysis instruments that were more and more sophisticated and that were capable of assessing impacts and actions for the business without Mr. Buzzoni realizing anything. For him, everything had to be easy and could be an object of intuition as usual. Only I and my group knew how complicated it was to make everything seem so easy. In the meantime, the shadows continued their silent work, and they produced information that created value. I couldn't live without my faithful and punctual shadows, said Mr. Buzzoni, and he laughed. And then, as he went away, he said, I, you, and my shadows are a great team. That was the 12th of July, 2023.
E allora.
Well then. Well,
allora,
we've told you some stories.
Vi abbiamo raccontato tante cose, vi abbiamo raccontato tante tecnologie. Allora il software, abbiamo raccontato dei gemelli, vi abbiamo raccontato l'internet delle cose, nella nebbia applicata al trasporto, alle automobili, applicata all'healthcare, vi abbiamo raccontato la cybersecurity, dietro il racconto del senza paura della banca. Vi abbiamo raccontato l'intelligenza artificiale,
artificial intelligence, which is at the basis of virtual assistants, big data analytics,
che è quello nel racconto, nell'ultimo
in the
racconto
last story that we just heard.
Bene. Allora,
Very well then, all of these technologies can be applied individually to various environments, to various industrial contexts. So, our industrial plan has an ambitious offer, an offer that we would like to explain to you in a minute. It's based on the technologies that you've just seen in various application contexts. Look at this now. Industry, as we saw in the machines that are connected to the digital twin via software in the system, the
optimize production and the products that then become services and provide information. The energy with intelligent electrical networks that are at the basis of distributed digital components capable of collecting data, of allowing for the input of energy in the various sources of the electric network itself, space, data that are collected via satellite, the fact of imagining the remote sensing of the Earth and the various processes from the satellite data, healthcare, digital healthcare, with all the technologies that help maintain the quality of services. And Italy is not doing too bad in that sense, also to the aging of their populations at sustainable costs, thanks to digital systems. But then further still, public administration. What we need to do here, despite the efforts that have been made so far, is to carry on with digitalization and make it much closer to the citizens. And again, telecommunications, of course, I need to quote them, the applications that produce images at very high speed with all components that, after all, are software and that run on a cloud. And finally, the world of finance with the evolution of the forms of payment and supply of credit to all sorts of companies, the larger ones and the smaller ones and the average-sized ones. These are the applications that we would like to offer our clients with this type of articulation. The common factor, however, is technology, and the various technologies have been organized in three different levels, three different digital infrastructures, the networks, the data centers, the cloud, a level of digital habilitators or enablers, and artificial intelligence and analytics belong to this, and a level of application that belong vertically to the same kind of system in finance and the managing of talents in the same way. This is the kind of systems that we plan to bring to our clients. We're very proud of them because they are the fruit of various months of work together. Pythagoras used to say that everything is a number after all. Therefore, let's see some figures, some data of what we've done. 2018, the total turnover of Exprivia Italtel will be 4 billion euros. For Italtel, the turnover will be 11 billion. In 2023, the specific turnover for Exprivia will be 25 billion euros. Italtel and other synergies will be 33 billion euros. In 2017, the makeup of our turnover for the whole group was 605 billion, and it was divided in this way. 29% of international, 34% telco and media, 8% is finance, 4% healthcare, 9% is industry and space, and 20% is telco and media. In 2023, this is what will happen. There will be a growth in the international sector, which will go from 29% to 40%. Telco and media will drop from 34% to 23%, while finance will increase from 8% to 9%.
Healthcare and public sector will grow from 9 to 10%. Enterprise, industry, energy, and aerospace will remain stable from 20 to 18%. And the total amount of this will be 757 billion euros. These are the figures and the content of the plan that we have developed jointly with a very important job. And we're quite impressed as well if we think of the convergence, the union that we have acquired in the last few months and that we will continue to acquire in the future. There's something, Stefano, however, that we haven't done so far, that is to start choosing what our new name will be and what the new brand of the future will be. Well, you see, there have been some suggestions. Actually, give me this remote and I'll show you one in particular. This is one to start with. Well, Exprivia is easy. But look at this. Look at the E. Isn't it beautiful? The E of the euro. But I would like to collect some suggestions from the floor. So, what do you say? Don't make me tell you.
Non te lo faccio dire? Come
How
la
would you
chiameresti,
call it?
dai? Allora,
ragionerei sul valore delle parole, quindi
I would
tornando
use the
alla
value
cultura, sintesi,
of
armonia.
words.
benissimo, benissimo. Allora, ancora un altro.
Another one? Beyond. That's a very nice one. Gianni? Sirio. Niccolo?
Cristiano.
Well, I liked the beyond that was suggested from the other side of the room. Beyond. Very nice.
Allora,
Umberto, what do you say? Italivia.
Una cosa che
Something
rimanga
with
l'Italia,
Italy in
No,
it.
grazie.
Thank you very
perché
much. These
sono
are all
suggerimenti
very interesting
interessanti
suggestions.
Ne vogliamo davvero avere.
We would really like to have lots and lots to choose from. And together, we also want to receive lots of suggestions of how we can carry out our industrial plan very well and at the best in order to do something for our country. Thank you very much.
The self-serving bias is an important concept of modern social psychology, and it refers to the trend of taking all the merit of our successes, whereas we attribute to others, our fellow human beings, society, or bad luck, the responsibility for our failures. In other words, the self-serving bias is that complex phenomenon whereby, in practice, we tend to overrate our qualities and underrate our defects and limits. If we succeed, well, that depends upon our ability and our efforts. If we fail, failure depends upon external factors. The phenomenon can be observed in the world of sport, where victory is always the result of hard work, and defeat almost always depends upon bad luck and, of course, upon referees. In the world of the economy and finance, where profits are the merit of skilled, expert, and shrewd managers, whereas losses are always due to the crisis. And by the way, the above-mentioned great managers receive premiums when things go well, but almost never are obliged to pay when things get sour. In the world of school and universities, where good notes depend upon studying intelligence, whereas bad notes depend upon bad teachers or on them being too strict. In the world of politics, where the electoral victory shows the good reasons and the ability of the winner, whereas the defeat depends once again from the crisis. The crisis, in fact, is an excellent alibi for cats of all sorts. and of course international factors, propaganda, and of course the stupidity of electors. And well, there is a good exercise we might suggest. Well, listen carefully to the comments after the next elections. I'm not referring to any specific election, but in this country, any time, well, we are just a few months away from elections. We tend to consider ourselves more intelligent, more skilled, more apt to morally correct behaviors and healthier than those who are more or less in the same condition as ours, schoolmates, colleague mates, colleagues, and so on and so forth. We tend to overrate also our prospects of longevity vis-à-vis the people who are next to us, as in the anecdote told by Freud of the man who told his wife, when one of us dies, I will go and live in Paris. Well, 9 car drivers out of 10 consider their driving skills far above the average, and when wife and husband make an estimate of the percentage of their contribution to the family chores, the sum of these percentages is always far beyond 100%. So there is a problem, one or the other, or more. Well, very often both of them. Well, they overrate the contribution. Being aware of the self-serving bias, well, will have a number of good consequences, can improve our personal relationship and our understanding of the world, and mainly can transform our idea of success and failure, literally changing our lives. Accepting that our defeats depend, as a rule, from us and not by someone else or by from ill fate, enables us to learn from them, appreciate them, make them desirable to some extent, and also seizing the unexpected opportunities they offer us. Bill Gates said that the best way to reach success is doubling the number of failures, of our failures. Niels Bohr said that the true expert is the person who has made all the possible errors in one's own field. And Goethe said, and this is the one I like very much, said that the errors of man are in fact what make him more likable. Michael Jordan was even more specific and more detailed, and I quote, "In my career I failed more than 9,000 shots. I lost 300 games. For 36 times my fellow mates entrusted me with a decisive shot and I didn't score. I failed so many times in my life, and that is why I won everything."
Allora,
iniziamo con i
Well, let's
ringraziamenti.
start by
Innanzitutto a tutti quanti voi che siete
thanking
presenti qui
people.
questa
First
sera
of all, thank
a questa
you,
presentazione.
members of the audience, for
E
being
ringraziamo in
here.
particolare
And I would like to thank in particular Giovanni Donofrio and Francesca Lupo from Italtel for having interpreted the stories of twins and without fear. I too would like to thank everyone, and I would like to thank Rosanna Palumbo, Angela Manzi, Carl Mirabelli from Exprivia, for having interpreted Fog, Friendly Shadows, and the Art of Listening. And then I would like to call our violin player, Gianluigi Moro, and Valeria Lanzolla. And I would like to thank everyone who helped make this presentation a success. Stefania Bondesani and Anna Maria Gigante from Exprivia, and for Italtel, Laura Borlenghi, Paola Cortellese e Daniela Fontana. I would like to thank the agency, Gianna Caruzzi, Ettore Chiuracci, Jacopo Palamari,
Monica
Tarricone,
e Augusto Masiello.
Augusto Mafiello.
I nostri strategy, Luca
Our
Ferrari,
strategy makers, Luca Ferrari, Roberto Ruffini, Gianni Sebastiano.
Gianni.
Alla fine voglio ringraziare in particolare,
let me give a very special thanks to Gianrico Carofiglio, who was kind enough as to be here with us this evening. But I would also like to ask him a question. As a writer, I'd like to ask him to contribute with a suggestion for our future name. Well, when you were interviewing the audience, I was thinking about it too. According to me, a concept on which you should speak about is convexity, something which penetrates the future and is fast, which wins over resistance. And this is my gift to you. Thank you very much, Gianrico. This is an excellent suggestion for the future. And I would also like to thank all the technicians who have done some excellent work.
Grazie.